Hour 2 of Tri-City Sports Now, 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. I am Marky Billson, your voice of choice for a new generation of Tri-Cities sports talk listeners, fans, and whatnot. And a new generation coach, only about 10 years off of graduating, is Del Smith, who is the head football coach of West Virginia Wesleyan. They'll be the opponent of ETSU at 7:30 tomorrow, Kermit Tipton Stadium on the Science Hill campus, as both teams, try to improve on 2-win seasons to this point. I'd like to thank Del Smith for joining us here. And I guess the first question here is, tell us a little bit about how this game came about with ETSU and the FCS hosting your Division II football team.
Well, for starters, I appreciate you having me. Thanks a lot. And, I think when I got the head coaching job here at Wesleyan, which is my alma mater, you always look for a challenge. And the easy thing to do in athletics is to schedule an easy win, especially early in your career at a place. And I don't want that to be the mentality of our football team. So we're always going to try to challenge ourselves and play up. We're working on games now for 18 and 19 with FCS opponents. And this is one of those things that I put out there. Our league is a little bit different in that we play 10 league games. So we only have one non-conference game, and we're on a rotation schedule. So where the majority of teams have open dates in the beginning of their schedule, ours is towards the back end, naturally, on the back half. So when I was coaching at Bridgewater last year, I saw that Emory and Henry played East Tennessee State University, and I actually broke that game down as one of our Emory breakdowns. So I reached out to them just to see if they, knowing that they were transitioning into the league, and see if they had a common date, and it actually worked out.
Well, now tell us a little bit. You're Division II, and I want to find out, how many scholarships are you allotted in Division II?
Well, a fully funded Division II program is 36 equivalencies. And to be honest with you, I think that the percentage of teams on the Division II level that are actually at 36 is very low. And the spectrum is very broad as it relates to who has what.
Okay, so how many scholarships does West Virginia Wesleyan have, Coach?
We're right around in the 30 range.
Okay. So, yeah, and I understand, some of the schools in West Virginia, perhaps a little bit cash-strapped and such. You mentioned your D2 league. I know traditionally there have been many smaller schools and, Salem, which is where they once had a pro football player named Jack Delaplane who played for the Steelers and all this. But they had to come together, and it's now Salem International, where they now, basically to keep alive, have a lot of international students and all this. Tell us a little bit about West Virginia Wesleyan. What kind of a college is this? I know it's in Buchanan, West Virginia, which means that you are several miles east of Charleston, I believe. But it's, kind of one of these places in the middle of nowhere. I'm a bit familiar with West Virginia. Tell us what kind of a school West Virginia Wesleyan is, if you would, Coach Smith.
Sure. We're actually north of Charleston, a couple hours, and about an hour south of Morgantown, where West Virginia University is, 2 hours south of Pittsburgh. West Virginia Wesleyan is a private liberal arts college. I think you mentioned schools like Salem and some of the state schools in our league. We're the exact opposite. I think we're thriving right now from an enrollment perspective. Our outgoing president, Dr. Pamela Balch, has been here for the better part of a decade. She's completed 9 capital projects in her 10 years. Enrollment is up. Enrollment is increasing. We just hired a new president, Joel Thurstein, who has just a tremendous background, educated at Syracuse University. He's been at Baylor and is coming to us from a school in Cincinnati. And, I think we're trending actually upward as it relates to enrollment and endowment. So we offer 49 different majors, 5 master's programs, 7 pre-professional programs. So really a lot of things happen here in a positive way. We inherited, this is our first year as a coaching staff. We inherited a 2-8 football team. We've matched our win total from last year. And, we're trying to build this thing the right way from the ground up to hopefully put, this program in the years to come in a position to compete for the Division II national playoffs.
Well,
Winner of the Mountain East Conference does qualify.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. If you are on the way up, why would then you be 6 scholarships short of the limit?
Well, I think, that increases over time. I mean, we increased our scholarship budget for this coming calendar year from where it was, so that trend's in the right direction. I think the reckless thing to do, and the reason that some of these schools might be in financial trouble, is that they go for broke and go 36 out the gate. And I think the fiscally smart and sound thing to do is to build towards that over the course of time.
Okay. Now, I wanted to ask you about this game. You mentioned that you had seen ETSU play Emory and Henry. Emory and Henry, the Wasps, beat ETSU last year. Are you more apt to therefore schedule the game as ETSU is rebuilding? Because, after all, right now, still a little short of the scholarship limits and such. You've got a better chance this year to beat ETSU than potentially in some years in the future if all goes well in Johnson City. Are you more apt to schedule this game now than you would be in the future?
Well, to give you an idea of my mindset, I'm in communications. I can't disclose it right now, but I'm in communications with a nationally ranked top 25 FCS program for next year. So where they are in their building program is really irrelevant to me.
Where do you think, when you examine the film and such, you mentioned you saw them against Emory and Henry, where do you see ETSU now as compared to last year?
They've gotten a lot more athletic, I think, in the skill positions, and I think that they've made some improvements specifically in their offensive and defensive lines. I mean, they're a year older. They've had another year to recruit under their belt. They've taken some transfer students and backfilled their roster. So I think from last year to this year, they've made substantial gains. They've got 2 wins against solid, solidified programs early in the year in Western Carolina and Kennesaw State. Those are not average football teams, and I think they've hit a tough skid here. I mean, they've played some nationally ranked opponents and some really good football clubs in the last 4 weeks.
We are talking to the head coach of the West Virginia Wesleyan Bobcats, Del Smith. He's a first-year coach up there in Buckhannon, West Virginia. The Bobcats will be taking on ETSU at 7:30 tomorrow, a Thursday kickoff for ETSU. Hey, it seems like the star player on your team is a Howard transfer, running back Michael Anderson. He's rushed for numerous yards. Some have said, compared his total yardage total to the total yardage that ETSU as a team has received this year. How did you land Michael Anderson out of Howard?
Actually, not a Howard transfer. Went to Howard High School in Maryland.
Howard High School. I'm sorry. I saw Howard, and my apologies. Okay, please, go on.
Okay, so Mike's been involved in the program for 4 years. He was here when we got here, so he was a really solid back that we inherited as part of this program.
Okay, I do apologize there. I saw Howard High School, and I saw on the roster while doing and I assumed it was Howard University, the Bison and such. So I appreciate you telling us, setting us straight right there. But what makes him such a successful running back?
Well, I think, in talking to the other coaches in our league, and some of them are good friends of mine, I don't know that anybody celebrates the skill set of our offensive line, but I think our line coach, Tony Testa, has really done a great job, and our offensive coordinator, Coach Engel, has done a great job putting our offensive line in a position schematically to be successful. And, our offensive line has given up the least amount of sacks in our conference. We're in the single digits on the year, and we have the second leading rusher in the country and the leading rusher in our league. So, Mike he's dynamic in the fact that he can make you miss. He's got top end speed. He catches the ball very well out of the backfield. And I think we're good enough at the receiver position that if you commit to Michael, and sell out to stop the run, we can be successful in other areas offensively.
You mentioned the offensive line, and while I was going down your roster, I noted Jordan Barnes, your starting left tackle. He's a senior, and I noted out of Woodland Hills High School. Now, a lot of our locals won't know this, but Woodland Hills has 4 players in the NFL right now, including Rob Gronkowski. At 270 pounds, I think that it's probably a stretch for Barnes to join those ranks, but tell me, what is this your best offensive lineman?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to ID a best offensive lineman because I think left and right tackles have very different skill sets. Your guards and centers have very different skill sets. So, Donnie Richards is our other tackle, and he's a heck of a player as well. He's our right tackle, and those two guys have different skill sets because we ask them to do different things in protection. But he comes from a great high school. I think when we recruit, it's important for us to identify guys that come from high schools that have rich traditions like Woodland Hills, and when you get a kid that's come from a winning program, that's ingrained in them and what it takes to win. And quite frankly, we need to do more of that as we go forward in our recruiting process.
Well, when another player that I think local fans would be interested in is your freshman running back, Jacob Jasper, who went to Tennessee High here in Bristol. Now, I noted he didn't have any carries, but is this a guy who could get on the field against ETSU?
I don't know, Jacob. He's traveling with us, and he's going to be dressed. He's a redshirt player, and he's in his second year in the program, and I think Jacob's got a bright future for sure. I think next year he's going to be very influential in our special teams game, and his better football days are ahead of him for sure.
Okay, so he'll dress, but it's kind of a long shot that he'll get any carries or something, especially with the presence of Anderson in the backfield. I haven't seen any film, and I know you're coming in as a D2, not a lot of information out of here, so forgive me for the elementary nature of this question, but could you give us your base offense and defense so that fans know what to look for when they watch the game? In other words, what formation? Do you run the I, the 4-3, that sort of thing?
Not a lot of I backs. We have to be careful as coaches to come in and draw a line in the sand and say this is what we're going to be, and not have a recruiting cycle to address it.
Sure.
We're not a very tight end centric offense simply because we just don't have them on our roster right now. You're going to see various backfield sets, not really the I, predominantly out of the gun, a lot of inside-outside zones, some power read with the quarterback. We like to sprint out and try to protect our quarterback. I think that's helped a little bit with our, protection. A lot of different route combinations. We're multiple offensively, both 1 and 2 back. And then, defensively, I think in 2016, defense is a week-to-week operation. In our league specifically, you line up against so many different things week in and week out. It's really a week-to-week game plan. By design, we're 4-2-5.
4-2-5, okay.
We get into some Okie fronts and play some 3-down stuff and drop some ends. So, it's defense in this day and age of college football is week to week.
Okay, that's very interesting because I know that a lot of people, and I know that you mentioned you thought that the line play was better this year for ETSU, but they have been criticized a lot. They've allowed 16 sacks, haven't really been able to get a strong running game going this year against the Southern Conference, their last 4 games. If you're going out of the shotgun a lot and giving the ball to Anderson, that means that the Jordan Barnes and such will have to hold the blocks a little bit longer. So it'll be a very interesting test for ETSU against your Bobcats there. Yes,
it doesn't take Mike long to get to the line of scrimmage. I know that much.
Well, that'll be very interesting. The Howard High School, and I want to say that because I had been saying before he is a senior, and I did see on the roster Howard, and that's the last school, and so it didn't say HS after that. I'm thinking, Howard, that's why he's so good. He's a transfer from Howard, And I do.
I can tell you this, much like ETSU. We've got kids on our roster from Virginia Tech. We've got kids on our roster from Delaware State, from Towson, and guys that were scholarship players on that level. So,
who is your Virginia Tech transfer?
Harry Lewis. He's a defensive tackle. He was a 4-star coming out of high school. He's a redshirt freshman here. Great player for us. again, has a ton of football ahead of him. We've got
Will he be starting?
Yeah, Harry starts.
Harry Lewis starting on the defensive line, Virginia Tech transfer. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all I had on him.
Okay, no.
Trey Lee's a safety for us that starts. He's a Towson transfer from the CAA. Jihad Abdur-Rahman is a 6'4", 270-pound defensive end. That's a transfer from Delaware State. So we've got our fair share of transfers as well. It's a pretty good brand of football here on the Division II level.
As a motivator, Coach Smith, you're playing a team in ETSU, and I know that you two are 2-5, but you're coming off a big win against Urbana. You've played your teams in Division II competitively, including, I believe, the second-ranked team in Division II by some standards. That was a rather competitive game early on in the season. But what I want to ask you is that coming off a victory and playing a team like ETSU, which, yes, is FCS, plays at a higher level, but is rebuilding and is coming off of 4 lopsided losses, what's the attitude of your team? Do you worry at all about fat heads?
Fat heads?
Fat heads, yes. Normally a D2 team coming into play at FCS would not have a fat head, but under the circumstances here, you coming off a victory, playing competitively, knowing that ETSU has lost to D3s, let alone D2s, as recently as last year, and coming off of 4 lopsided losses, I know you're not coming down to Johnson City to lose, so are you talking to your team about getting a fat head playing such a team in a losing streak?
Absolutely. They don't exist in our locker room to date. We've lost 4 games by 3 games by a total of 10 points, 3 of which were on the last drive. We just so happened to win the one on the last drive this past week. We played the number 2 team in the country to their tightest game to date on a Division II level. And, this is a building process for us, too, regardless of who we line up against or whether there's 1 or 2 eyes behind the classification of their school. We've put together a game plan to try to win a football game, and we're going to get in there and tee it up and give it our best shot for sure.
Well, it'll be taking place at 7:30 tomorrow, Kermit Tipton Stadium, Science Hill campus, as ETSU plays one of their last games, actually, at the high school field, which is probably a good thing for them. It's not probably, it is a good thing for them as they move into a new stadium next year. By the way, I would ask you this. Is there a chance that this will not be the last meeting that the Bobcats will play ETSU? Do you looking
perhaps? We actually, we've had that conversation back and forth. It really comes down to open dates. And as I said before, we don't have a lot of flexibility in our schedule. Our open date rotates forward 3 weeks for next year, so we're in the September 29th, 30th window for 18 and 19. And, if it's mutual and they have the date, we'd love to play again. I'm in conversations with 2 other FCS programs, one of which is top 10 team in the country, and we're looking forward to the challenge either way.
All right, it is Del Smith we've been talking to. He's the head football coach at West Virginia Wesleyan. As I said, they're going to take on the Bucks tomorrow, 7:30 here in Johnson City. Coach, thanks for joining us. As I tell everybody, this is not a gimme game for ETSU. They are just not in that state yet. And like I said, Harry Lewis, a Virginia Tech transfer on one end of the line and a senior Woodland Hills grad on the other. ETSU is going to have their hands full